Now we'll finish up the show with a couple of questions. Firstly, looking ahead to the weekend, we've got the last two Players' Championships of the year, followed by the Grand Slam qualifier for tour card holders this weekend. A big weekend, but who is this weekend most important for?
There's a few that it's really key for, and that's, if you look just at the World Championship right now, there's a three-way tie for the provisional last spot on the Pro Tour with a couple people less than one win ahead of that, and then some players who are one or two wins behind that. Right now, Jeffrey Desrain on Countback has the last spot, ahead of Adam Gavlas and Ian White. But there are Ryan Joyce right behind them, Mike DeDecker and Martijn Kleermaker right ahead of them, and then other players like Joe Mernon and Scott Waits and Nathan Rafferty who are a board final or a board behind them. So there's a lot to play for. And it's really, really close. And getting to Worlds is obviously a critical step and a goal for most players at least when the season starts. For a few of these players, they might have had loftier goals. Ian White obviously didn't expect at the start of the season that he'd be battling just to make the World Championship. Ryan Joyce probably had higher aspirations as well. But when push comes to shove, this is where they're at, and they need to get some results. But it's even bigger for someone like Joe Mernon, because he's just 1,250 pounds back. That's 2 wins on a day from getting into the World Championships. And he probably needs to get to the World Championships to save his tour card. As things currently stand, he's 60th, but that doesn't include World Championship money. Just getting to the World Championships, add maybe another 3,000 pounds over the next two events. That gets him there, plus the 7,500 first round minimum. That's probably enough to win keep his tour card. We don't know for sure, but I think it's going to be somewhere between 65 and 70,000 when it's all said and done. That's a rough estimate because it's so difficult to predict what's going to happen at Worlds. But that means he needs to get to the World Championship and to do it. And then you have some players who are just outside who, if they can get to the World Championships, might be enough to save their tour card. Jeff Smith, who's just a little bit back, if he has a deep run, that could get him in. He's currently set to lose his tour card, which is a bit unfortunate because it's been so difficult for him with the COVID traveling over at least last year. And that's where he really started his regression. Adam Gavlas, if he can get to the World Championships, that gives him a chance to get to save his tour card. And then there's even players like Devin Peterson and Steve Lennon who, unless they win through the PDPA qualifier, aren't going to go to the World Championships. But just winning a few matches might be key for them to save their tour card. Steve Lennon, he probably needs a few thousand pounds at the very least. Devin Peterson might be safe, but a win or two won't hurt to make sure that he's back on tour next year. Neither of them, as I said, are currently in the World Championship, but every match matters. Even if it's not going to be enough to save your season, it could be enough to make sure you have a tour card last year. And I'll just mention one more person who is hoping to win a tour card. And it's not going to be, well, it might be, obviously, if he wins this event and then goes and makes the quarterfinals of the World Championship, who knows? But it's most likely not going to be based on his results, but someone else. And that's Danny Van Tripe. As things currently stand, he's the person in line to get a tour card if Scott Williams is in the top 64 after the World Championships. That's because Van Tripe finished third on the Challenge Tour Order of Merit. Scott Williams is first. So if Scott Williams is not in the top 64, he takes a 2-year tour card through the Challenge Tour Order of Merit. If he is in the top 64, he keeps his ranking and gets a 1-year tour card through his ranking. He's currently provisionally 64th when you throw in the money that he has for qualifying for the Grand Slam, for qualifying for the Players' Championship, for qualifying for the World Championships. And he's going to be in all three of those. Now it's about adding another 10,000, 15,000 pounds over the rest of the events to make sure that he stays in the top 64. That could, 2 wins at World would do that. But the second one would have to be against a seed. So you can't back on that. You need to keep winning, getting results. And will want to get results because he's in a good position to keep to move towards qualifying for the match play and other events next year. If he's not in the top 64, it's not just his overall order of merit that resets to 0. It's the Pro Tour. So there's a lot for him to play for. But if he can get some results this week, make that a little less that he has to do in the major televised events over the next couple months, that will do not just him, but Danny Van Tripe a lot of good. So it's a big weekend for Danny Van Tripe as well, but not necessarily based on his results, based on Scott Williams' results.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting subplots to follow, and I like that one with Danny Van Tripe and Scott Williams. Imagine if those two draw each other or end up playing in a semi-final or a final, would be quite interesting to watch with that in the background. But yeah, this is one of the most, you'd say, important weekends of non-televised darts on the PDC calendar, with the last two Players' Championships and then the Grand Slam qualifier the same weekend as well. And I'll start with the two Players' Championships that we've got on Friday and Saturday, and they've got two majors to try and qualify for, the Players' Championship finals and the World Championship as well via that Pro Tour list. And I think a quick head count, there's around 8 or 9 first-year tour card holders currently set to qualify, and 2 players without tour cards set to qualify. You mentioned one of them, Scott Williams. You've also got Carol Sedlarczyk in there as well, and 2 of the players, the first-year tour card holders, 28th and 29th on that list, so they're in the spots at the moment, but they don't have a huge buffer to play with, and that is Mickey Mansell and John O'Shea. You mentioned there Jeffrey Desvan in that 32nd spot, and even if he hangs on and gets that spot at Ali Pali, he's going to need a run to keep his tour card, but a run or two this weekend that could bump him into the field for Minehead, and that could help lower that amount of money that he's got to try and get in that top 64, which I think at the moment provisionally is around £15,000. So any win that he can get this weekend, get into the World Championship, get into Minehead, could make a big difference for Jeffrey Desvan. And you mentioned Ian White as well, someone that dropped out of the top 32 after the European Championship at the weekend, one of the players outside at the moment on countback, but someone that's been a staple in the World Championship for the last 10, 11 years, and to see him not in there would be quite surprising. So he's in need of a big weekend, and as you say, players looking to save their tour card getting into the World Championship could make all the difference. Jeff Smith, who you mentioned, Andy Bolton, John Henderson, Max Hopp, some of these players a little bit further back, but we've seen them go on big runs on the floor in the past. We've seen Max Hopp win a title on the floor. We've seen some of these players get to finals, get to semi-finals. So the game is there. It's just whether they can produce it this weekend when there is that much pressure on it. And come on to the Grand Slam qualifier as well. And I can't remember who put this on social media, but of the 4 semi-finalists from the 2020 Grand Slam 2 years ago, currently only one of them has qualified for this year's event, and that's Simon Whitlock by winning the World Cup. You've got the reigning champion Jose de Sousa, the runner-up James Wade, and one of the other beaten semi-finalists, Dimitri van der Berg, all currently not in the field for that event. And James Wade, Jose de Sousa, they could avoid that qualifier, knock Rob Cross out of the last provisional spot if they win both the titles, go back-to-back this weekend. But in all likelihood, those two, along with Dimitri, are going to be in that qualifier on Sunday. So 8 spots on the line, but as we've seen time and time again, you can pick 8 players that you fancy to get through. You can look at the 8 top seeds and go, they're going to take some stopping, but a one-off day, a one-off qualifier, you are going to see some surprising names get through. You are going to see some big names miss out. And if Jose de Sousa misses out, that's title money coming off his ranking, and he could be heading out of the top 16. So it's a big weekend for him, big weekend for a lot of players. And yeah, I think there would have been a lot of our listeners that would have been following Dart Connect last weekend for the Women's Series. You're going to need that page open again this weekend because there's a lot to play for.